Hey there everybody, Kyle Sasser here. It's everybody's favorite time of the month. That's right, real estate market statistics time. These real estate market statistics are for Hillsborough County for November 2025. So if you're a longtime watcher of the channel, you will notice that we've had a little bit of a gap since the last video. I think the last one that we did was in September, maybe August. So yeah, it's been a little bit since I've released a video. I've definitely still been doing real estate, but what happened is basically to compile these reports every month, it takes 3 or 4 different systems kind of working together, you know, from gathering the statistics to putting them into a, tables so that they can be retrieved, and then generating the report, and then finally generating this video. And basically everything except for generating the video broke. The service providers basically changed the level of API calls that they were okay with letting me use. And if you've seen these reports, you know that there is hundreds, there's at least hundreds, maybe a couple thousand of individual records that need to be pulled to compile these reports. And they've limited it to maybe about 20. So it took me a little bit of time to put the reports back together, and you will see they are kind of bare bones compared to normal, but the important bits, which are the information tables and the charts and historic data, all of that is here. And then over the next, 3 or 4 weeks, now that we have the framework complete, I'm going to work on putting the pretty stuff back in to make the report more presentable. For those of you that this is the first time you're watching, you probably don't care about any of that. You just want the numbers. So let's dive on in. So the thing to remember with these stats is we are comparing year to year. We are comparing October 2025 to October 2024. The reason we do that is because the natural calendar year has a ebb and flow that follows the seasons as well as the school year primarily. So things through wintertime tends to slow down, and also start and end of school things get a little weird. So if you're comparing month to month, there are months that will always naturally have a lot more activity simply because there's not these other things going on. So we are comparing October 2025 to October 2024. The additional thing to remember is also there was a hurricane last year, so all of these numbers are going to be off a little bit. Additionally, we look at an entire month and compare that, because if we do week to week, a week can be significantly affected if there is like a holiday that moves around, or if there's just a particular bad stretch of weather, even in addition to hurricanes. If it's just kind of a little bit more rainy one week, that puts a damper on a lot of things. So a month is kind of the smallest digestible size that is applicable for real estate. And the good news is real estate is always moving, but it usually doesn't move too fast. So compiling numbers monthly and then comparing year to year with a little bit of an eye on what's happening month to month, that usually gives us the clearest picture of what's happening in the real estate market. Now, if you remember back to your math class in school, you'll remember average and median, which is part of mean, median, and mode. So mean and average are kind of the same thing. Everybody kind of knows how that goes. Let's say you have 5 houses. You add up the prices that those houses sold at, that is the average. And then divide it by the number of houses, that is an average. Median sales price is a little different though. With median sales price, if you have, say, 100 houses, the median price would be the price at which there's an equal number of higher priced houses and lower priced houses. The median sales price does not tend to move around as much, and also it is not as effective if there is a large number of very low or very expensive, or a couple very expensive houses. If your local football quarterback professional decides to sell his house, that can move the average sales price significantly more than median, where it's just kind of another data point. And also, since total number of sales is a little lower than it has been historically, the average tends to move around pretty significantly, and the median has been moving around a little bit more than usual, but it's kind of the best metric we have. So I always pay a little bit more attention to the median sales price. All right, let's dive into these Hillsborough County numbers. Closed sales are up 7.62%. from 1,103 to 1,187. Cash sales was up 2.79% from 215 to 221 cash sales. Median sales price dropped slightly, down 0.45% to 420,000, while average sales price was also down 3.6% from 568,119 to 547,639. I felt like a lot of numbers. Median percent of original list price was down 1.04% from 95.8 to 94.8%, while median time to contract grew 2.63% to 39 days. That is still pretty sellers-ish market to a slight neutral market. Number of new listings grew 32.23% to 1,594, and total active inventory grew 18.68% from 3,973 to 4,715. Foreclosures and short sales. Foreclosures there was 6, and short sales there was 4, so not a lot of impact in the doom and gloom section of the market. Now, I do like to break down the different price categories. $1 million house sells for a little bit different time frame than a $300,000 house. Primary reason why is there's just more buyers in the $300,000 price category. I try not to go over every one of these because that gets a little monotonous. I just kind of try to hit the high points. So the interesting thing is we did sell more houses compared to last year. Not surprising. 250 to 300,000 was up 106.82% to 91. That's probably the most attention grabbing one of those. 400 to 600,000 was up 7.28% to 383. Median time to contract, again, everything's taken a little bit longer. 1,000 was up 281% to 42 days. That's pretty big. 250 to 300,000 though, 38 days. That was only up 26.67%. 400 to 600,000 is at 44 days. It's a 10% increase. So far as new listings, there's more listings compared to last year. 200 to 250,000 is up 90.48% to 40. 300 to 400,000 is up 53.02% to 482. 400 to 600,000 is up 28% to 548. And inventory, total inventory, this is everything that is for sale. 100 to 150,000 is up 150% to 10. 200 to 250,000 is up 52% to 76. And 300 to 400,000 is up 13.77% to 1,165, while 400 to 600,000 is up 16.56% to 1,746. So 300 to 600,000 is where the largest chunk of the market is at currently. And really 400 to 600 is where, so let's say we have 4,700 homes for sale, but 1,700 of them are in one price category here. That is definitely the bulk of the market. So those are the real estate statistics for Hillsborough County for November 2025. So what sort of analysis can we pull from these numbers? Main thing to keep in mind is, October 2024, there was definitely some big things going on, namely Helene and Milton. And so during that time, the real estate market was shut down for 2, 3, 4 weeks. That just depends on the area. So you kind of have to take these numbers, and especially the big movements for closed sales and the number of new listings, with a grain of salt, because this time last year, there was some natural disasters that were impacting the numbers from last year. Now, that said, the Tampa Bay area is kind of interesting because Pinellas County and Hillsborough County tend to kind of follow each other in the same sort of patterns, right? So, and the one thing I will say about Hillsborough County is it still continues to hold, despite taking 2 hurricanes to the face. Hillsborough County has held median sales price within a $10,000 to $15,000 price band for the last 18, 20 months at this point. Nearly, it's a very long time. So it's been bouncing between 420 and 435, maybe 440. So it's basically just been kind of going up and down through that price band with the natural ebb and flow of the real estate cycle. And that's even from before the hurricane, that's what was happening. And that's still what continues to shape up, which is absurd. If you had told me, hey, 2 hurricanes are going to strike are going to significantly impact the Hillsborough County and Pinellas County area, do you expect median sales price to hold? And my answer would have been no, but the numbers are the numbers. Pinellas County, though, some things get lost in the noise. So Pinellas County, what continues to happen there is there's kind of, while historically, we look at the entire county, kind of 2 markets currently. So you have the flood and storm damaged areas and properties, mostly around the coast. Some, there's some creeks that come up, but it's mostly around the coast. But they're definitely feeling the impact. Prices there appear to be going significantly lower. And the primary reason for that is because someone that is looking to buy a house to live in, to get a mortgage and all the normal things to buy a home to live in, you cannot buy a flood damaged house. You cannot mortgage a house that has the drywall cut out to 4 feet. So that is only cash buyers. So that is, again, it's not necessarily artificial because it is definitely a real disaster, but it's not quite the true picture of the real estate market. If you remove the flood damaged area, areas and you only look at the non-flooded areas of Pinellas County, you will see that prices have held to down slightly, but there is still significant demand in the central, not flood impacted parts of the county. And that gets reinforced a bit because, like I said, Hillsborough County and Pinellas County tend to follow each other. Pinellas County is usually a little bit higher priced than Hillsborough County, but they tend to follow the same pattern. And the fact that Hillsborough County has held leads me to believe that if it basically just reinforces that, you know, Pinellas County has also held. That said, things are definitely more sluggish than they had been the preceding years. Inventory has continued to grow, and if that mismatch between demand and inventory continues, and if it's true inventory, not just the flood damage stuff, because again, you can't mortgage a house with significant flood damage. And the additional piece here is what normally happens is as those hurricane impacted areas return to normal, as more and more and more houses in those areas get fully renovated and go up for sale, and as the obvious flood damage disappears, as you know, the homes get renovated and stuff like that, prices tend to return back to normal prices. But it is kind of a bit of a race, right? Like, so, you know, inventory is starting to get to the point where we could potentially have a mismatch in inventory and supply, especially as we're getting into the wintertime period here. That's usually a slowdown period anyway. So if you have been thinking about buying a house, it is a prime time to get out there and look. If you can, I know it's annoying to look at houses through the holidays, but things slow down so significantly that sellers feel like they have to make moves to get the house to sell and that things are never going to improve, even though they almost always do in the springtime. But because of that, you can usually negotiate more concessions, more repairs, lower prices through the wintertime months. So overall, things in Tampa Bay still going pretty good. You know, it is pretty sluggish though, especially compared to even earlier this year. It's still a bit more sluggish. But on the plus side, there's also things that would tend to bring buyers back to the market. Interest rates, I have seen people get into the 5s now on conventional loans, which had been unheard of for preceding couple years. I have started to see people get conventional loans in the 5, and whenever interest rates come down, that usually causes interest and demand to grow as well. So thank you so much for tuning into these market stats for Hillsborough and Pinellas County. My name is Kyle Sasser. If you're looking for your own amazing home in the Tampa Bay area, I would love to help you out. You can reach me at 727-300-2111, or there's a link to my calendar in the description down below. You can click there, choose the time that works best for you to have a chat. Again, there's a lot of positive indicators in the real estate market. We have run into a couple little hiccups with the government shutdown and getting some deals closed. I'm going to be doing another video on that, specifically flood insurance in that particular case. But you know, by and large, things are still holding pretty steady in the Tampa Bay area. Certainly, you know, we have been doing considerably better than much of the rest of the state. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Kyle Sasser, and I'll talk to you soon.